Greg McElroy of College Football News Network, whatever he's with nowadays, predicts 9 games for Tennessee as far as wins. He says Tennessee, quote, will be in a bit of a correction and ranks them number 18. Says they'll be around 9-3. He cites losing Hendon Hooker, the top 2 receivers that we know of course, Hyatt and Cedric Tillman, 2 offensive linemen, the most significant of which I don't think there's any question is Darnell Wright that they lost. So let's reset today's tough question as here we go. What about that? Today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, it's on the Twitter. I posted it this morning. If you haven't hit the like and subscribe button, please do so. So let's go to the Twitter poll if we can, Caleb. Cite that for me that I posted this morning. So what have we got so far as reaction to a possible 9-3 season, Caleb Calhoun? Where are our percentages?
81.8% say still trending upward.
If Tennessee finishes 9-3.
Correct. 18.2% say success. 0% say disaster or concern.
Okay, so we continue to fill that out throughout the day. What do you think on the message board? Give us the 4 choices again, Caleb, if you can, and then we'll get your thoughts on the message board as far as Tennessee. If they were to finish 9-3, is it time to sound the alarm? Still trending upwards. What are our choices exactly again?
Disaster, concern, still trending upwards, and success. Still trending upwards is dominating. Success is second.
All right. If you had to choose between the 4, what would it be?
I would actually say concern, and I'll tell you why. One of the marks of coaching, and I'm going to say this on a broader sense, and this is actually something I'm going to talk about in the future, not for today's show. But Dave, you know this: the gap between the talent level of coaches in general the line is much thinner than people think. Little things that write the narrative change the whole nature of recruiting in college football. You agree with me on that, right? Like just the tiniest things, it changed the narrative. If Josh Heupel goes 9-3 this year, immediately every coach is going to jump on and say, hey, Tennessee regressed. They were just a flash in the pan. That narrative is going to be just enough to hurt them in recruiting beyond where they don't need to be hurt. They need to match what they did last year. And an example I bring up is a more extreme case of this was Philip Fulmer. It was self-inflicted. Fulmer did it to himself. But I will say where Fulmer was hurt was a lot of the national media coverage about Fulmer losing control of the program in the mid-2000s killed recruiting for Tennessee. I remember 2007. They won the East in 2007, but they started the year like 1-2 or 3-2 or whatever, and went unranked. And there were a bunch of national stories like Fulmer's lost it. I think that wrecked the 2008 recruiting class because that whole narrative was out there as Fulmer was trying to recruit. And so it didn't matter that he came back and won the East. And so little things like that just the tiniest thing can mess up.
I'm going to tell you why I think it would be concerning. And it's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com is in North Knoxville, but can service the entire Knoxville area. AndyMasonRealEstate.com is my realtor. He should be yours. Best service, best prices in the biz. And AndyMasonRealEstate.com is where you need to go if you want to save money and have the best service. Let me tell you why right now that it would be concerning. And Travis hit on it on our message board. Travis says, but next year would be pulled up the wrong one. There we go. All right. So it says, considering our schedule, it'd be concerning to lose 3. Yeah, the schedule is the difference to me. If you would have told me that Tennessee is looking at a 9-3 season when Josh Heupel was hired, and they're going to be 9-3 in 2023, I think everybody would have said that's fantastic. But with the schedule and what Tennessee showed last year, it would be disconcerting. And I'm not saying overly disconcerting. Now, I'm taking out of the equation mass injuries or a coach leaves in the middle of the season because well, that would be disconcerting as well. But let's take out injuries. Let's take out fluky, crazy plays where Tennessee might slip up and lose to an A&M or a South Carolina. If Tennessee loses to Alabama and Georgia, there's no great concern in that. Tennessee is knocking on the door as long as they're in those games. I think that's fine. That's understandable. You're not going to have a streak, I don't believe, where you beat Alabama 10 years in a row again. You're not going to dominate Georgia like Tennessee did in the 90s. So I think aside from injuries, I think it would be seriously concerning if Tennessee went 9-3. I'm not saying fire the coach, but I think that would mean a couple of things. It would mean Josh Heupel didn't handle the quarterback situation correctly, or Josh Heupel's offense has been figured out to some extent. That's disconcerting if one of those two things happens, because in my opinion, it would be the second time he didn't play the best quarterback or handled the quarterback situation correctly. So for those reasons, yeah, I think 9-3, even though that might sound crazy off a program that was in total disarray just a couple of years ago, I think that would be disconcerting, Caleb.
Yeah, it would. I agree. Now, that's where I'm talking about, where I bring up, you got to start wondering, could he becomes dangerously close to going the Gus Malzahn trajectory if he goes 9-3 this year. Now, you don't want to use that.
And for those that are younger or might not get your reference, I get it, but explain what that means.
So Gus Malzahn came to Auburn in 2013 and immediately took a 3-9 team and went 12-2, won the SEC, had the greatest regular season game in the history of college football when when Auburn beat Alabama, went to the national title and was a play away from winning it. Never came close to matching that. The next year went 8-5, then stumbled to 7-6, 8-5, 10-4, 8-5, 9-4, 6-4, and then was then fired because he can never match that first year. I think what happened was, because Auburn had such a drop off in 2014, that really hurt them in recruiting. Because the thing is, Auburn is not. I don't know I think Tennessee's in a better position than Auburn, but Tennessee's not a Georgia. They're not an Alabama, and they're not an LSU. And what I mean is, they're not as uniquely positioned to just easily fall out of bed and get a top 5 class the way those schools are. So if you have a bit of a drop off year, you kind of it can really kind of hurt you in recruiting. And that hurt Gus Malzahn a lot. Now, what you bring up is kind of interesting, because you have compared we've both compared, if Josh Heupel is anybody, he's the new Steve Spurrier of the SEC. And funny enough, there's a bit of history here, Dave. You probably remember this. Florida wins the SEC in 91. That's their first SEC title with Spurrier. That's his second year on the job with Shane Matthews. They enter 92 in the top 5, expected to take a huge step forward. And they actually have a bit of a drop-off. They go 9-4, barely finish in the top 10. That was the year that Fulmer and Heath Schuler upset Florida in the rain. And so, I mean, Spurrier did have a drop-off that year. And then Danny Warfel came the next year, and he took that absolutely dominated the SEC.
What year was that rain game again?
92. Spurrier's third year.
I can tell you, because I was a student at the University of Tennessee, and that rain wasn't predicted. And there might have been an awful lot of co-eds that were wearing white shirts that day in the student section.
So what was more? Well, okay.
I thought to myself, this college thing, man, this has got it going on. Football, and I hadn't met my wife yet. Football and basically a wet T-shirt contest at Neyland Stadium is what that day was.
And you know how you're an SEC hardcore fan? If you're at this game and you're a Tennessee fan and you're debating on looking at the wet T-shirts or enjoying Tennessee putting it on Florida, you don't know which one's more entertaining to look at.
You throw in Guns N' Roses, and it would have been the absolute perfect day. But yes, wet T-shirt contest at Neyland Stadium, and Tennessee beating.
It wasn't ABC. Well, my understanding was ABC's telecast was knocked off the air that day, and if I remember, that was Todd Kelly's breakout game on defense. I don't remember, but I've read about it.
Yes, and was it Rhett, the running back for Florida? I remember him getting stuff thrown at him, which is not a Tennessee tradition and shouldn't happen, but I remember it happening.